So today I'll be going over one of my favorite series, more specifically the books that I read, the Harry Potter books. Obviously, if you look at the title, and one thing I kind of want to know is that when these books were released, I was probably like in middle school, or around like sixth or seventh grade. So when I started reading them, actually she was already on I believe the third book on Prisoner of Azkaban. And so my mom got me the box set with the three books that were currently published. And I'll admit I didn't finish reading the first book. I ended up reading a part of it before actually going to see a movie, which was amazing at its time. I mean, we're talking about in the early 2000s. You see these special effects where they're flying in brooms, where there's a three-headed dog, where it's such a magical experience when you look at it on screen for the first time that it's amazing. And again, considering it was the early 2000s, it was not your typical film, not the typical special effects that you would see. And so I'm gonna start with book one, which is, depending on where you live, Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone, it's still the same stone, to be honest. And so, one of the things that the way that this book begins really is that you have this scene where you're in London or somewhere in London where we're following this family, this kind of typical family. There's no magic about them. It's just um, this man who works at a joint company and is in charge of making the contracts. His wife, who is a stay-at-home mom, which nothing wrong with that. Uh, and her biggest kind of hobby is to meddle into other people's affairs, especially neighbors. And then you have like this toddler who is kind of a brat. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I mean, Dudley is very much, he gets what he wants and they give him what he wants. So really, there's no kind of like consequences to anything he does. And so, as this man, Vernon Dursley, he goes on his car, he rides to work, he starts seeing these kind of strange events. So at first, as he's leaving the driveway, he sees this cat who apparently is just loitering around that's not really doing anything. Which you would say, well, if it's a stray cat, there's nothing wrong with it. But he notices that the cat kind of looks around, kind of like looking for a special address or looking for something, which he kind of kicks off his mind because nothing abnormal happens, right? Magic doesn't exist and nothing like that. And as he's in traffic, he gets to see a lot of people in robes, in full blown robes, and he thinks, well, that's kind of odd. Maybe they have like some sort of convention of some sort. Uh, but then he sees that there's other grown men that might be even older than he is, and he just thinks, well, that's kind of ridiculous. What do they think they're doing, really? So he gets to his office. It's a good day for him. It's lunchtime. He doesn't notice like anything kind of odd going on, and when he gets back home, that's when he sees the same cat, but he reasons that it has to be a different cat, right? So he goes through the motions, they go to sleep. There's even kind of like a report in the news that there's a lot of owls for some reason, even when it's not the season. And so, well, everybody goes to sleep. Vernon Dursley, uh, I forget the name of the wife. I'll look it up for the next video. But anyway, well, obviously, Dudley, he's also asleep. He's a baby at that point. I think a year old, more or less. Anyway, so you have that the cat is really a woman. I mean, from a woman, she's a cat, and then she's like a full blown tall woman. And at that, you have that she's actually waiting for the arrival of somebody else, another wizard who apparates, in other words, kind of like teleports, you could think about it. And they are waiting for news. He starts asking her questions like, oh, did you enjoy the day? Did you celebrate with everybody else? You shouldn't be here. You should just enjoy your time. And she says, well, yes, true, but everybody is, for one, they're being careless. They're not keeping the fact that they're wizards a secret. So that's not good. But also, uh, there's something else going on, and she wants to know if it's true what they're saying. And what they were saying is that apparently the greatest and darkest of all dark wizards had been defeated by a mere baby. And not just that, that the baby was the only survivor. That his parents, both Lily and James Potter, had died. Which Dumbledore, the name of this wizard who had operated, he confirms that that is what happened. Uh, Hagrid is kind of half man, half giant, comes in. He arrives with the baby on this flying motorcycle. He tells them that he kind of stumbled upon Sirius. He lent him the motorcycle so that he can get to safety, but he brought the baby, and they leave the baby along with a letter addressed to the Dursleys, and explain the situation. And that's where it. That's all we know for the next 11 years. And so Harry grows up to be kind of not on equal terms as his cousin. And he is his Mrs. Dursley's sister's son. Well, you could kind of say that it was kind of like this abuse that he was going through, because one, well, they didn't starve him per se. They would either punish him by not letting him eat a meal or so, or maybe they make him do a lot of chores, things that they wouldn't force on the other boy. And so they weren't on equal terms. And even when something bad happened and he had nothing to do with it, he was still the one to blame. And so, after 11 years, and now that they're going to be going into middle school, he's kind of happy because Dudley apparently is a bully. Not surprising. He gets what he wants, whenever he wants. No consequences. It kind of fits in. And he is thinking, well, once I go into a new middle school, because Dudley's going to be sent into like more of a prestige middle school. They're not going to be in the same grade, or, well, they are going to be in the same grade, but they're not going to be in the same school. And so probably things might get better. Because you see, with Dudley, the other students are kind of afraid of him and his minions. And so Harry, even though he wasn't disliked, many people would avoid him just to kind of avoid any problems with Dudley and his gang. And that would bring about a lot of problems, because it wasn't just Dudley now that Harry was worried about. He also had to worry about the gang members who, if they were at school or if they went to Dudley's home where he also lived, then where does he run? And so oftentimes he would have to either hide, or if they were able to lay a hand on him, then things happened. And so one of the things is that Vernon, he is not he is trying to. It seems like at a certain level he's trying to kind of keep Harry down, kind of like keep him from something, or from doing something. And so it kind of feels like there's something going on. Obviously, you as the reader, you're barely hearing that there's kind of magic and whatnot, but Vernon and the family, they're in Privet Drive. They're the complete opposite. Nothing is at normal. Everything has to be normal, human, non-magical. And so, without going into too much detail, Harry ends up going along with the Dursleys, um, because the person who was the lady who would babysit Harry, she had broken her ankle, so she wouldn't be able to take care of him. And so Vernon begrudgingly takes Harry with them, because they weren't going to leave him alone with everything of value in the house, with the TV and whatnot. And so they arrive to the zoo. They're all looking around, and the zoo is kind of meek. One of the places that they go into is the reptile house, and this is where one of those changes that you see from, if you compare the book with the movie, it's one of those beginning differences. Because I should also add, in the movie they didn't show how it was as far as with all the owls coming in the city, or the people wearing robes, or Vernon having his good day at work. None of that. you don't see anything of that. But when you talk about the reptile house, uh, Dudley is just walking around, and he's basically just trying to entertain himself. It's his birthday, right? So everything is about him, if it wasn't already. But he arrives to this boa constrictor that is supposedly a Brazilian species. He raps on the glass, doesn't respond. He keeps on rapping on the glass. He shouts, "Hey, do something!" The boa constrictor is just sitting there, or lying there, and so he moves on. And Harry kind of feels sorry because he knows what it feels to be closed in the space, and just people kind of having to go at you. And he finds that as he is talking to this snake, the snake is apparently kind of nodding, agreeing to him, and kind of responding to what he is saying. And it wasn't until later on that he noticed that, oh wait, you understand what I'm saying? And the snake, he nods again, and he wants to kind of help the snake. And so, in this difference between the book and the movie, and in the movie, once Dudley arrives at the glass and just kind of going, "Hey, hey, move or do something," that's when the glass disappears, or not disappears, but, or to say, he comes back. He comes back with the snake, and as he's rapping again once more to have the snake do something, because he knows that with Harry the snake was kind of moving, the glass disappears and he falls in. In the book, he doesn't actually fall in, because in the movie they make a show of it. He falls through the glass, and then the snake comes out, and then when Dudley wants to go back out, the glass kind of reappears. In the book, the glass just disappears, the snake comes out, and just Dudley is kind of scared, and he starts saying, "Oh, he almost ate me alive, and I was gonna die," and stuff like that. Exaggerations. And so Vernon gets really angry at this, and even though Harry has no explanations of how that happened or what even happened, Vernon just goes way into him, saying, "You know what, you're going to be grounded," and whatnot. And Harry's, "Oh, well, it wasn't my fault." Anyway, and so as of the days go on, Harry starts receiving a letter. And the thing is, at first, the letter came in with all the other letters. Harry was sent to get the letters. He did, and one of the letters, was addressed to him. And as he was kind of spraying around the letters to Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, he notices that one letter is directed to him from a mysterious place, a place he has never heard of. He wants to read it, and that's when Dudley notices that. He takes away the letter, tries to read it. Vernon says it was going to be written to Harry. And he sees the crest. He knows what's it about, and he doesn't let Harry get it. And so he tries to avoid Harry getting the letters for days and days and days. And the more he denies the letters to Harry, the greater amount of letters are arriving for Harry. And it's no longer, you see, Harry was sleeping under the stairs. There's like a cupboard, and that's where he was sleeping. And the letters were saying, well, to Harry Potter, living under the stairs cupboard, something like that. And then that's when Vernon said, "You know what, I probably didn't know something. We're going to switch it up to a spare room that we have, to a guest room. That we're just using it as kind of like a storage room for Dudley's toys." And so they did that, and now it's kind of addressed to a smallest room. And so, well, you can see what's going to happen, right? That as more letters are arriving, Vernon is getting more anxious, and Harry is also trying to look for more opportunities to get the letters, until Vernon explodes one day and says, "You know what, we're going to go out on a trip." They go across country, and eventually they find this small island in the middle of the sea where there's like a cottage. He takes them over and says, "Well, now they're not going to be able to reach us." And that's where he's wrong. That's when Hagrid, the gentle giant, the one who had brought Harry as a baby to the Dursleys, that's where he finds them. And he's not too kind on the Dursleys, and and he's right in not doing so, because on the way that they treat Harry, it's not that right. And that's when he reveals to Harry that he's a, that famous line, "Joe, is it Harry? I'm a what?" Anyway, so he does reveal that Harry is a wizard, and his parents, contrary to what the Dursleys had told him, they did not die in a car accident. Instead, they were killed by a dark wizard, and nobody knew how he had survived. And so this leaves more questions than answers. And so I'm trying to keep this very short. So I'll just skip to basically he has this decision because he also learns that the Dursleys know about this and they just were trying to suppress his powers, making him feel miserable, and that way he doesn't learn that he has magic. And what it is that he has a choice. He has a choice to make: either remain as normal Harry, or become Harry Potter the Wizard, which he wouldn't be a regular boy at that because of what happened when he was a baby, and because he doesn't know how at that moment, and also nobody also understood what happened with Voldemort, the Dark Wizard. He is not just regular Harry Potter. He is the Harry Potter. He is famous. He's even in like the modern textbook of history of magic. And so, be the normal Harry Potter or be the magical Harry Potter. Obviously, he chooses to be the wizard. He decides to be the wizard. Harry Potter, the magical wizard. Anyway, and so Hagrid finally delivers Harry his letter. They go for the school supplies over at this kind of magical place in the middle of London called Diagon Alley. Not Diagon Alley, but Diagon Alley. You'll get what I mean. What I mean in the next review of book 2. And so he discovers there's this whole new world that's open to him. They get the textbooks. He gets the potions. He gets the robes. He gets everything, right? And this is like another distinction between the book and the movie. He actually meets Draco Malfoy. Malfoy, his like nemesis. For the first time, he meets him at I forget the name of the shop, but it's where they get the robes, and he's kind of getting fitted with the robes. And when he doesn't realize who he is. Draco is just going like on and on about how they allow Muggle-borns to Muggles being the people who don't have any magic, who weren't born with wizards, just people that were born from other people who don't have magic and they themselves don't have magic. There's also like that other distinction, but I'll touch on that for the second book. And he kind of notices that this is not kind of like the best company, and I don't really like him. And so once he finally gets the robes, he gets out and he meets up with Hagrid, and they go for his animal, Hedwig the owl, and who becomes one of his bestest of friends. Now, a really kind of key moment in the book, both in the book and in the movie, is when he gets this wand. Because when he goes and gets this wand, as the wand maker says, it's not the wizard who chooses the wand, it's the wand who chooses a wizard. And so when Harry had, when he was giving Harry, and I'm talking about Ollivander, when Ollivander was giving Harry the different wands, he notices that not one of them was actually accepting Harry. And so that's when he gets an idea about, well, how about this wand? And it was a really special kind of wand, and it reacted to him in a good way. So obviously it was going to be his wand. What makes this wand very particular is that the core is made of a phoenix feather. Well, the phoenix feather from a phoenix tail. And what was special about this is that phoenix, they not only they use that tail for one wand, but that phoenix had one other feather grow out of it, and that feather was used for a second wound. And so it comes to be that the two ones that share that connection is Harry's and Voldemort's, that dark wizard who wanted to kill him when he was a baby. Now, we go through the motions in which Harry is now going back. Well, he's going to go to school, and Vernon's not really happy, but he also has an ace up his sleeve. So, on kind of the last day, well, not the last day, but the night before, he does ask Vernon for a ride to the train station for platform 9 3/4. And Vernon is kind of eerily happy because what Harry didn't know is that there is no platform 9 3/4. So where are you going to get on? I mean, there's platform 9, platform 10, but there's nothing in between, or so he thought. And so when Vernon takes Harry in the morning, he tells him, "Well, we'll see what happens to you." And Harry doesn't understand. That's when Vernon says, "Well, there is no platform 9 3/4. So, yeah, good luck to you." And he just drives off. Harry does eventually find other people who are also going to platform 9 3/4, and it's this wizardly family. And he notices that because of the way that they're talking and the word muggle. So as he's pushing by and he follows them, he sees that they go between two pillars. And how they start going through is that between the two pillars, they are running one by one. They're running to a pillar and they're disappearing. They're going through somehow. It's like magic. Magic. Anyway, so what's kind of interesting is that because he has nobody with him, and because he himself has never had kind of this opportunity to grow up into an entitled human being, he is very nice, and the family is very taken with him. And this family, well, they are the Weasleys. And Mrs. Weasley does tell him, "Well, is this your first time?" They don't know who he is, and he doesn't offer his name, but she does tell him, "Well, if you want to go through, just kind of walk towards that column, and if you are feeling nervous, just kind of sprint through." And he does. He makes it through. He makes it on the train, and as part of the family of the group, there was Ron, who is in his same age and going for the same school year and whatnot. And he gets on. There's everywhere is full, and he shares the cabin with him. And this is kind of like the start of one of the best friendships in the series, because again, Ron is from this poor family, and one thing that happens in both the book and the movie is that as the train's moving on, the one of the train ladies, who has a cart filled with kind of candies and snacks and kind of food and all that, is just a food cart. As she's running by, she's asking, "Well, do you want anything?" Ron, obviously his family being poor, and he only had like this sandwich that he doesn't like. And this is when Harry kind of, because he never had that chance of sharing anything with anybody, he says, "You know what? I'll take the whole lot. I want to try a little bit of everything." And he purposely buys more than what he will actually eat in order to share with Ron. And he even says, "I'll trade you your sandwich for this other thing." I think it was like chocolate frog or something. And that's how they kind of like start their friendship. And it's really beautiful, because it is a wonderful. It is like a magical thing, because you're talking about like Ron, magical family. His family's not like in the best of positions, but they're like a happy family. They're exactly what Harry has always wanted, and he has not had from the Dursleys. The Dursleys, even though they're well off, he's never had that kind of like warmth and he's never had that kind of connection with anybody so close. And so this way it's so kind of wonderful because it's not just with Ron. He also forms this kind of almost mother-son connection with Mrs. Dursley. He also forms like this brotherly connections with Fred and George Weasley, which are the other brothers, um, with Ginny as well, as people who have gone through a series knows what happens between them, and so it's kind of like a beautiful thing that starts. But anyway, we reach over to Hogwarts, and it's amazing. A big castle, whatnot. In order to get there, the first years have to go through this kind of. They don't go in with the rest of the students, and uh, one thing that the movie does, and I think they did it very well, is that when the first years go to Hogwarts, or at least in this book, uh, this movie, they reach Hogwarts through these small boats, and they travel across the lake, while the rest of the students are kind of walking in. And in the book, they actually go into like this side path, it, through like a side door, and that's how they go in, and then they go towards like this like the Great Hall. That's where they go to. Kind of like what this background is. Anyway, so when they go into the Great Hall, one of the beginning ceremonies is the sorting of the houses. Hogwarts is a magic school that has four houses. You have the Slytherins, the Gryffindors, Hufflepuff, and the Ravenclaws. We get to know a little bit more about the founders on later books, and I think you even start learning about them from book two. But in essence, what they have to do is they put this hat on, and the hat can look into their minds and kind of tell, okay, your values and the way you are fits more in line with this founder or that other founder. And so in the case of Harry, he the hat was having an issue, and for some it doesn't take that long. They even say, for some, even before touching the hat already knows where they're going to head to. And for others, it does take a little bit longer. With Harry, it did take a little bit longer because as the hat is going through the Harry's head, he kind of is conflicted between two houses, and he tells Harry, "You can be a great Slytherin, but you can also be a great Gryffindor." And because Harry knew beforehand that Draco was in Slytherin, and obviously, well, he had gone first. Harry was like not Slytherin, just anywhere but Slytherin. And so the hat says, well, if it's not Slytherin, might as well be Gryffindor. There we go, Gryffindor. And so he reaches the table and he's met up with Ron as well, who is also now in Gryffindor. And so as they start their classes and Harry starts learning more about magic, he starts realizing, well, hey, I'm not that far off, because even the students who have grown as witches and wizards for all their lives, that didn't really guarantee that they had any more ability than he has with magic, which is kind of fun if you think about it. And so as he starts learning more about the magical world, one of the classes that and this is where it's not really clear, because we only ever see one class. So it's not really clear if it's kind of like just a course that they're getting, or if it's a full-blown class that lasts for a whole school year, or maybe for like a certain time period. But one of the things that this course, I'll just call it a course, is for learning how to ride a broom. And so when Harry gets in the broom, it's like, wow, because he immediately, instinctively knows what to do, and he can control the room without any effort. And this comes into play as Draco is teasing one of the other Gryffindor boys, first year as well. His name is Neville Longbottom. He is kind of more clumsy, but he also had just received that morning a an artifact, like a magical artifact called a remember ball, which is supposed to change colors if you forgot something. He grabs the ball, he throws it up, and kind of like teasing Neville after he had fallen down from the broom and broken his arm. And no one was supposed to fly under brooms. Even the instructor said, if you whoever I see flying is going to be expelled. And so Draco does what Draco does. He grabs the ball and he is kind of like messing around with it. And Harry is mad, and he is very annoyed. Not mad, he's very annoyed at what Draco is doing. And so he says, "Give it back." "Well, I'll give it back if you can take it." That's what Harry does. He gets on the broom and he flies towards Draco. And Draco is like very impressed, because even though Draco has been like exaggerating himself, like saying, "Oh, I know how to ride brooms and a good flyer and whatnot," Madame Prom, not it wasn't Madame Pomfrey, but the instructor had been telling him, the way you've been flying is wrong. Anyhow, Draco just throws the ball, hoping that it will break, and Harry, very surprisingly, for somebody who has never flown in their life, he heads towards the ball, and right before it reaches the ground, he catches it and is able to kind of get out of the dive. So he doesn't crash, he doesn't get hurt, but he does get caught. And he gets caught by Professor McGonagall. And Professor McGonagall is a special character. I mean, she is very strict. She is very rules. She is very much about the rules. But she does have like this other side of her where she's very passionate. And so what's kind of funny is that she comes in and says, "Harry Potter, follow me." And again, this is where kind of the book differs a little bit from the movie. In the book, they actually go to her office, and she calls for Wood. And the funny part is that, or I don't know if it should be funny, but kind of like the funny part is that, you hear Wood, and what are you thinking? So Harry actually thought that was the name of like a board or something that she was going to use to like spank him or something, or for punishment. And it turns out that it was a student. Actually, it was a student named Wood, or last name is Wood, and he is the captain of the Quidditch team. If you can imagine Quidditch just being kind of a combination of football and basketball, because they're up on their brooms and they're going over to the different hoops on the extremes, and they're trying to get the ball. They all have their names. I just forgot them. To go through the hoops, and that's how they score the point. There's 3 hoops on each side, and so Harry gets accepted in the team, and everything is going great for a while. I mean, it looks like everything has kind of normalized until the introduction of this small mystery. Because you see, it all starts out with Hagrid inviting Harry to his cottage. Hagrid is also the gamekeeper of Hogwarts, and so he had invited him to the cottage, and Harry also invites Ron, and I don't remember if he invited Hermione, because there's a point where Ron and Hermione are not they're all 3 of them are not on friendly terms, and so I forget, but the fact is, Hagrid has this egg. It's a dragon egg, which it's illegal to have. And apparently I won it like in a card betting game. And a dragon is born, but in one of those visits, Draco had been following them and finds out that Hagrid has a dragon. And not just that, but Hagrid can be in lots of trouble because of it. Harry and Ron kind of devise this plan in which they'll get one of his older brothers, who's no longer in the school. He actually trains dragons, and a couple of his friends were going to be traveling around that area, And so he had sent him a letter, and the plan was at nighttime, once the friends were going to be flying by, they were going to get the dragon over to the top tower, or one of the tallest towers of the astronomy area, and that's where they would pass on the dragon to the friends, and they would take the dragon to the dragon sanctuary where that dragon was going to be safe. It didn't happen without a hiccup. Uh, well, it kind of did because they were successful. They were able to bring the dragon and all. But then you get into Draco had told Professor McGonagall, and Professor McGonagall caught them. They were in trouble. They never caught them with the dragon, and so the thing was that they said, "Well, it looks like." Uh, so the impression was, okay, you guys probably uh, kind of baited Drago into thinking that there was a dragon, there wasn't a dragon, just so that he can get in trouble. Now everybody's in trouble, right? And one of the punishments, and I know that I'm skipping a great chunk of the book. Um, there is quite a bit to say, but the punishment is that they have to go to the forest, and in that forest, they run into this creature, or better said, Harry runs into this creature, who moves around, kind of floating, but its movements are more like a snake. And not only that, but apparently, well, what can I say? It was fortunate that a centaur arrived, because of course there are centaurs in the forest. They um, kind of save Harry and take him to safety, back to Hagrid. Now, I did not note this before, and I'm kind of thinking about this, but one of Harry's professors, he teaches potions. Professor Snape is also not kind of like one of the only people that doesn't like Harry, and so what ends up happening is that when they start unraveling this mystery about about this mysterious figure, and then what they might be looking for, and then also Hagrid had let out the name. What was the name? Nicholas Flamel. So, surrounding this mystery, they kind of figure out Harry, Ron, Hermione, who are now friends after this incident with the troll, which is kind of like a separate part of the story. But in essence, a troll gets into the castle and goes into one of the girls' bathroom. But uh, earlier that day, Ron had said something terrible about Hermione, which she overheard and made her very sad. Around the lines of, that's why she doesn't have any friends. Uh, which, if you are familiar with the phrase, it's Wingardium Leviosa, not Leviosa. Well, it's kind of like from that same. It stems from that, but what ends up happening is that um, because they're warned by one of the other professors, Professor Quirrell, they are informed that there's a troll in one of the lower areas, and well, the students are going to safety, but Hermione had not been seen, so Ron and Harry kind of they felt that it was their duty to let her know, because of course she could die because of the troll. And the thing about it is that when they kind of met the troll. Not that the troll saw them, but they got to that point where they were there with the troll, and their thinking was, well, we can trap the troll in one of the bathrooms. But they didn't notice that it was in one of the girls' bathrooms, and so who was in there was Hermione. So, oh, it could have been bad. And they are able to kind of knock out the troll, not kill it, just kind of knock it with its own club that it had. And the reason why I mention all this is because with all these mysteries and these kind of dangerous events that are happening, they start kind of blaming, or more than anything, Harry starts blaming Professor Snape, thinking that he is probably the one that's behind you know, the troll behind him almost falling off of his broom, behind, whatever is going on in the castle. And so one of the things that is going on as well is that they are trying to figure out this mystery. Who is Nicholas Flamel? Because if they could figure out who he is, they could also figure out what is Hagrid hiding from them. Or better said, what is the school hiding or protecting that is so valuable? They do eventually find out, who Nicholas Flamel is, the inventor of the Philosopher's Stone, the stone that gives you eternal life. And so, well, now they know, and now they're going to tell Professor Dumbledore. The thing is, Professor Dumbledore is no longer in the castle. He's actually out somewhere. He's out like on a errand, I guess. And the thing is that because Professor Dumbledore is not going to be there in the castle, they figured, well, now is the time that Snape or Professor Snape is going to attack. And they do manage to, they do put their plan into action. They actually go out to a second or third corridor. It's like one of those floors where that leads over to the object, to the stone. And they see that Fluffy, which is a giant three-headed dog that belongs to Hagrid, is sleeping. And so they know that somebody has gone through her. They go through Fluffy underneath the door that Fluffy was covering and protecting. They fall on Double Snare, which is kind of like this plant that tries to strangle you unless you have a very strong source of light. After they survive the Double Snare, they also arrive to this room with the keys that are flying around, and only one is the actual key. This is where Harry uses his abilities with a broom, because there's a broom, in order to get the key. They cross over, and Ron, who happens to be really good at wizarding chess, which is the same thing as chess, except that the pieces kill each other. So you know how when you move in chess, you say, "Oh, okay, I killed your piece, and here it is." No, the pieces actually smash each other or hit each other, so it's a mess. But he's really good at it, and because in the kind of one of the penultimate moves, Ron has to sacrifice his piece, which he's on. Then, because they have to kind of take the places of different chess pieces in order to play, and he has to sacrifice his position so that Harry can win the game. And that results in kind of Ron staying there. Hermione also continues on with Harry, but they're in this area where there's different potions, which this is kind of where the book also differs, because it's they have the vials and they have like the poem and the clues, but one of the things is that Hermione, you can see that Hermione is very intelligent, and one of the surprising things that she does is that she tells Harry, well, I might be intelligent, but you have true talent. So you are the one who needs to go through. She helps him decide what potion to take in order to cross over one of the fires. And that's where he ends up, where the stone is. Except that the stone is not there. It's Voldemort, or to be more specific, it's Professor Quirrell fused with Voldemort. Because Voldemort, when that happened, when the event with Harry as a baby happened, yes, he did quote unquote die, but he didn't really die. And because he's still kind of like a piece of soul, you could say, but he no longer had his body. And he had been kind of traveling around until, he met up with Quirrell in the Albanian forest, and he is using Professor Quirrell's body in order to, as a host, so as a way of keeping his soul somewhere. And so that happened, and this is where Harry's actually surprised that it wasn't Professor Snape, and Professor Quirrell explains, well, no, it's never Professor Snape. He was actually trying to go against what I was doing. And if it weren't for him, I would have gotten the stone much sooner. Except that now, where's the stone? And like one of the plot twists is that uh, in that room there is a mirror, the mirror of Erised. Now Harry had already stumbled upon the mirror, and during the Christmas break, he found that um, in one of the rooms, in another room where the mirror was, this mirror, what it does is that it shows you your innermost desires. And what Harry would see is that since he always wanted a family, his parents, his grandparents, cousins, all of that, a family that he didn't feel that he had, especially not with Petunia. That's her name, Petunia. Not with Petunia, not with Vernon, not with Dudley. He always wanted a family. And that's what he saw. He saw his mom, his dad, his cousins. He would see the rest of his family in that mirror. Amazing. And so with this mirror, he could see that in his reflection, he it's not that he's doing it, but he in the mirror, the reflection, he is grabs a pocket, taps it, goes in and shows that it's the stone, puts it back in, and all of a sudden he feels the lump in his pants. So he knows that he now has the stone. Professor Quirrell is still kind of flummoxed. He's not really sure what's going on or where the stone is. He even asks Harry, "You know where the stone is?" No, okay. But Voldemort, who is behind his head, he comes out and says, "No, he knows where it is. He has it." And that's where he realizes that Quirrell, or more specifically Voldemort, can't touch Harry, not physically, because it starts to burn him. And when Harry realizes that, he touches Professor Quirrell and goes over his face, the arms. He tries to hold on until Professor Quirrell disintegrates and Harry loses consciousness. When he wakes up in the hospital, Dumbledore is there, and he kind of explains the events that happened. And what it was is that Professor Quirrell had met Voldemort, who was using him as a host, and he was looking for the Philosopher's Stone because he was hoping to get back into a physical body and regain his strength, which didn't happen because Harry stopped him. The reason why Harry ended up with the stone is because one of the charms protecting the stone is that only the person who wanted the stone but not actually use it, that person was going to end up with the stone. But if the person wanted the stone and wanted to use it, they were never going to get it. And that was Harry's case, because he wanted to get the stone just to stop Voldemort from getting it. But it's not that he actually wanted eternal life or anything. He just wanted to keep it away from Voldemort. And that's why he ended up with the stone. And Dumbledore also happens to explain a little bit further, in which Dumbledore had kind of heard a prophecy. And in that prophecy, he learned that he had to defeat a baby, basically. That's why he went after Harry. And because Harry's parents wouldn't allow Voldemort to kill him, Voldemort killed them, Lily and James. But when he wanted to kill Harry, he couldn't. The spell that he used kind of backfired. And the reason for that was because when Lily, Harry's mom, died, she left him a magical protection, a very strong and very ancient type of protection, which is love. And it was love that had prevented Harry from dying when he was a baby, and it was love that protected him from Professor Quirrell actually touching him. That's why he couldn't even touch him. And so, now having learned this, he feels a little bit better because he now is learning a little bit more about the truth of what actually happened and who he is, where he's coming from. And so Hermione and Ron, they meet up with Harry, and they're ready to leave back towards London, back to for the summer. And Hagrid gives Harry a gift, which is this photo album with photos of Harry as a baby, his parents, and it was really kind of heartwarming because you could see that Hagrid, for his, he might be clumsy, and he might is and as you might have noticed, slipping out that, oh, there's this dog, three-headed dog, Fluffy, or have you mentioned that Fluffy, you control him by playing music, and little stuff like this. Like, for all his flaws, he has a great heart, and Harry, he feels like this close connection with, not just because he picked him up as a baby, but also because, just like him, Harry is also an orphan, and also he feels like he should be like this uncle to him. That's how Hagrid feels out throughout the whole series, as if he were like a foster uncle, and they have a good relationship. It's very pure, and it's Harry knows that he can count on Hagrid, although Hagrid does have his flaws, but what can you do? And so that is the end of book one. Book one is actually wonderful. Yeah, this is going to be way too long. I'm going to cut this down, but the book one is really wonderful because you are introduced to this magical world, and you get to meet not just the world but also the characters who we're going to be spending a lot of time with throughout the series, and you start certain mysteries are starting to unravel. You still don't know much about anything, but there is enough for you to want to learn a little bit more about what is going on. Who is this Voldemort? Why did he want to kill Harry in the first place? Why was there that need? How is it that Harry survived? Because, of course, it was through love, but how did that happen? And so there's a lot of questions that are left to be answered, and that are eventually answered throughout the series. And I kind of, I do kind of like the fact that it's not given to you all at once. There is kind of like everything has its own time. Everything has a pace. I actually, as I mentioned before, I didn't actually finish reading the first book before I saw the. Sorry, I didn't actually finish reading the book before watching the first movie. But after watching the first movie, I was so excited that I went and started all over again from the very beginning. Finished book one, right, book two, book three, and in that time, I think that the accelerated reader program it's kind of like this program in schools, where depending on the wording on the books and how long the book is and like other things, they assign books points, and you have to earn a certain amount of points. And for Harry Potter, I think book 5 and 6 were the ones that didn't have any, and this was in high school. Books 5 and 6 didn't have any points assigned to them, and well, it is what it is, right? But everything was wonderful. I mean, till this day, I always enjoy going over the series from book 1 over to book 7, and it's kind of like a yearly tradition for me at this point. Every year I'll go and read all 7 books, and it's just wonderful, very wonderful. I also enjoy watching the movies, and even if the movies do lack a lot of things that happen in the books, they do pretty much a good job of letting you know like the essential information. Although there are a couple of things that they should have left in the movies, but doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter. But anyway, if you have any thoughts on the book or on the movies, let me know. I mean, what was your favorite part of the movie? What did they not add to the movie that was in the book that you actually wanted it to be in the movie? Feel free to leave a comment, and we'll see you soon. Talk to you later.